Hello, parents, educators, and nerdy D&D fans. You have found our new home for Area of Effect, a talk show where we discuss how tabletop role-playing games benefit the whole family. We're currently in process of shifting all our old but golden episodes over to this new channel by posting a new episode every weekday until we catch back up to our new episodes. We would love your help getting this new channel up and running with a follow, share, or review. And thanks for joining us on our quest to bring more adventurers to the table.
Do you like dungeons?
If you kill us all in this dungeon, how are you gonna feel?
14 acid damage.
How about dragons?
Is there a dragon here, though?
There could be.
I'm Paul, the DM and producer of Make Believe Heroes, a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons adventure for all ages. If you're looking for top quality production values, including music, sound effects, with humor, heart, and occasionally a bit of horror, then go now and check out Make Believe Heroes, a proud member of the Potteration Network.
Hi there, I'm Hugh from Podderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Dungeons and Dragonfruits, the bizarre, strange, and queer in every sense of the word D&D podcast. Join 5 friends as they laugh, learn, and adventure their way through the weird, wonderful world of Widdershins, where dragons hatch from trees and have adventures of all forms in every shape and size. Available wherever you can get your podcasts.
Kids Table Podcast.
If you've been enjoying our kid-focused D&D content, I hope that you will consider supporting us on Patreon. With membership tiers starting at just $3, you can enable myself and Ryan to continue creating content like this into the future. Not only that, but you'll receive awesome perks like free resources, exclusive Q&As and deep dives, and even personalized shoutouts on the show. So, will you join us on our quest to bring more kids to the table?
What does it look like to introduce difficult subjects to kids at the D&D table? Consider this example from a recent episode of our actual play show, The Kids Table. The team is trying to gain entry to the closed library in the city of Trivestia, and the Red King presents them with a choice.
However you deem fit to get rid of my cousins, Queen Pancham and Queen Daria, I'll leave that up to you.
So are we in agreement then? Or you're just dismissing us?
He is dismissing you. He has given you the task of getting rid of the other 2 queens.
In exchange.
He will let you in the library.
Did I, the DM, really give my kid players the option of committing regicide? Is that an appropriate topic for kids? What exactly am I doing here? Today on the podcast, Allison and I talk about teaching morality and ethics to kids at the table in appropriate and healthy ways.
Welcome to Area of Effect, a podcast by The Kids Table, where we discuss how tabletop RPGs benefit kids and answer your questions about playing TTRPGs with the kids at your own table. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Allison. How are you?
I am doing just lovely on this sunshiny day. How about you?
I am doing great. I just came back from the beach. I'm slightly sunburned. I forget that the sun still shines even when the clouds are out.
Yeah, right?
I know.
Yeah, my kids were telling me the other day that they don't need sunscreen when it's dark.
That's true. I mean, that is actually... Yes.
So maybe that's like where there's clouds, it's dark.
Yeah, no. Wear your sunscreen on the beach even when it's cloudy, kids, but not when the sun is down. You don't need it when the sun is down.
I guess not, yeah.
So today we are talking about morality in D&D. So light topic.
Super light.
Super
fun. Kick off the summer with your popsicle.
Yep.
Discussion on morality and children.
And ethics. How do you teach kids ethics? Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. That clip at the beginning is from one of the recent episodes of The Kids Table where the team meets one of the 3 rulers of the city of Trivestia, who are all sort of vying for power, the king, and he basically asks them to off his cousins. So, is that appropriate?
Were you planning, DM Ryan, were
Yes.
you planning on putting the children in this position?
So yes, I was actually. So
Okay.
so I'll start the discussion by saying when you are doing slightly heavier topics with kids in D&D, you have to plan in advance. Like you don't want to just drop really heavy stuff in because kids need to be prepped. Kids need the ability to feel their way through some of these situations. So all of the harder topics that we've come up with on the kids table in both season one and in season two, I have thought about it beforehand. And anytime the kids themselves have tried to go off in a direction where the morality is going to be problematic, I have brought them back. There have been
Yeah.
a couple of times where one or more of the kids has tried to expand beyond the boundaries of the story, which is great. And you want kids to be able to be free to, explore the space. And knowing these kids as I do, and knowing what they are ready to encounter, sometimes I've had to bring them back from the brink a couple of times.
Save them from themselves.
Save them from themselves. Like, you want to murder this person? No, you don't. No, we're gonna do something else right now. And it's because like kids can handle hard topics, but kids can handle hard topics when they are prepared and when they have scaffolded, when you have scaffolded that encounter for them. So yes, so long answer to a short question. Yeah, I did actually prep this. The king, whatever the secret to this is no matter which part of the city they went into, the red part, the green part, or the blue part, they were eventually going to have to talk to the monarch of that part, and that monarch was going to ask them to do a bad thing.
It's an illusion of choice.
Yeah, illusion of choice. But that's how sandbox play works sometimes. But yeah,
I loved watching as like the implications of the decision that was before them continued to unfold. I loved watching Mom Raynell's expression of horror. And she was like so flustered. And she was trying to have like a discussion with the kids about like how they should approach this. And like she didn't want to say like murder the queens, So she was
right.
like trying to like dance around the phrasing. But basically it came down to I highly recommend, by the way, listening to this whole arc, which I believe is episode 9, 10, and 11
Yeah,
from season 2.
yeah.
Yes. So you kind of get the whole picture. But basically, there's 3 rulers in Trivestia, and the king asks them to deal with the other 2 so he can be the sole ruler. So as the parties discussing their options, they basically come up with 6 options. 1, eliminate the blue and green queens to win the red king's favor. 2 is to break into the library, which is their goal anyway, to get access to the library, but the king is holding that over them. 3, assassinate the red king, our rogues knee-jerk reaction response to any situation.
Yep.
4, to pit the monarchs against each other and somehow use that for their favor. 5, to flip sides and align with the 2 queens and kind of like throw the red king under the bus. And 6, which isn't in the final cut, but isn't a deleted scene we're going to share, to eliminate all 3 of the monarchs and become the rulers of Trivestia themselves.
Yep.
So, just some light kids game choices.
Moments. Yeah. What I really loved about that was that they came up with all of those 5 of the 6 of those options by themselves. The Red King presents them with the one, and then they walk away and are trying to figure out what to do about it. And they come up with all of the rest of those by themselves. Some of them, Raynell, our adult player, guided them into. Some of them they came up with just out of the blue. And that's one of the cool things about teaching ethics and morality to children is that they have the ability to grapple with these really hard concepts. And they have the ability to do that inside of the story, right? So, yes, some of the story is railroading, but even though I'm like providing the boundaries of the sandbox that they are able to play in, they are still coming up with all of these potential responses on their own. And when you're teaching ethics, when you're trying to get kids to think critically about morality, that is an important part of the scaffold to give them options, to let them explore. It's no use to children to just be didactic and say, like, this is the good choice, choose this choice, and any other choice means the story is over.
Wouldn't that be wonderful if they would just learn from that
Yeah.
and not have to make their own mistakes and experience the
Correct.
consequences.
Correct. Yes. Yes. Every parent who has ever had a child can say that works perfectly, just like that.
Yeah.
You got to let kids make their own mistakes, and D&D is a place where they can make mistakes with fewer consequences. This is one of the things that we talk about all the time. That risk taking in D&D is a great way for kids to push boundaries in a safe space, in a safe way. Um, and so this is one of the things that they can do here too. These are all live options before them. Like whatever they choose to do next, I will spin out that part of the story for them. I'm not going to let them just become terrible, murderous people. Like I still do have a duty of care to the children at my table. So this is where the yes or strategy comes in sometimes. That yes, you could murder all three rulers, or you could lead a revolution, right? Um, but whatever they choose, however they choose it, I will frame it in a way such that they can continue down that path.
That's interesting. Earlier, you talked about, and you just mentioned it again, like stopping them almost from going too far. So, how do you determine when it is too far? And how do you determine when it's okay to make a choice that's maybe not the best choice so that they can then experience the consequence and learn from that?
Ooh, that's a really great question. Part of that has to do with knowing your kids, knowing the kids that are at the table, right? Some kids are going to be devastated if they pick the quote wrong choice. And so those kids you have to handle with a different sort of care than the kids who just want to jump off the cliff and see what happens. And we have both of those kids at our table
Yep.
in this season.
Uh-huh.
So how you handle the table is sometimes different than how you handle each individual kid. So sometimes you allow them to split, you allow them to go separate ways for a little bit so that each kid can experience their own consequence. This is also where NPCs come in really handy when they've made specific relationships with NPCs that they are coming to trust. Those NPCs can be the voice of the DM in the story without being
Yep.
as heavy-handed as like, no, you don't get to do this. But also,
Don't murder the king. Join our revolution
right,
instead.
exactly, yeah. They've already met like a cleric at the Temple of Creativity, and they keep going back to this guy. So this guy, like, they're starting to listen to. So you can use that voice, right?
Yeah.
Or suddenly a new NPC pops up, right? If a new NPC has to pop up and lead them in a specific direction. But the question is, how do you know when it's appropriate for them to fail? And again, like it's just kid by kid. If the failing is going to make them less interested in the story or in the game, then I don't believe it's an appropriate way of failing. If it's a way of communicating something important to them and they're going to still be invested in the story after that point, let them fail.
Here's a question. In a kid's game, the moral choices you present to them, do they need to be more black and white than they would be in an adult's game?
I think that it doesn't matter how you present them, they will become black and white in the eyes of the kid. Uh,
Huh.
so the way that you present an ethical situation is less about your verbiage choices and more how the kid is going to internalize it, right? Adults, so this is a brain development thing. Adults' brains are developed in such a way that they can think abstract thoughts and they can take abstract notions and they can take them to new places. Elementary school age kids, so older elementary, which is where Beckett and Chloe are in this season, they are concrete thinkers and they're sort of on the cusp of being able to think abstractly, but they still think in concrete terms. And in certain ways, morality is black and white for them. For Dylan, that is not the case. Dylan is a teenager. Dylan's brain has developed to the point where he is thinking abstract thoughts. And so you can see some of that push and pull in the way that Dylan and Chloe and Beckett all interact, in the way that Raynell sort of has to, herd the cats. They are in different stages of brain development. So the choices don't necessarily need to be a binary good or bad, right? Beckett and Chloe are old enough to be able to recognize what is good and what is bad. They're the concrete thinkers. They will put them into those categories. What they need help with is determining the gradation of good and bad, right? All of the
Yeah.
choices that they are presented with right now are going to have a consequence. And they have to determine what consequences they can live with. And that's one of the really fun things that I think about, or I like about storytelling in this way, right? You can think, younger children, when I'm, doing games with my 6-year-old, the choices are much starker, right? Because he's not even in concrete operations yet. He's still in,
Yeah.
right? He and especially my 6-year-old who will touch the hot stove if you let him.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to be told, don't touch the hot stove.
Yeah.
But the choices in the game, like when it comes to these sorts of moral choices, there has to be a discussion element. There has to be a time for them to be able to process what is going on and to think about the external consequences to these choices.
And someone has to walk them through the consequences because their brains won't necessarily make the leap forward to the potential consequences.
Exactly, which is why it is helpful to have an adult player like Raynell at the table, even though she is surprised by the choices that are being presented, right? I haven't told her the story, so
Yeah.
in advance, so she's as surprised as they are. But, she and I are on the same page about where we want the kids to be going developmentally, and so she's able to shepherd them in a specific way. This is where NPCs also come in helpful or come in handy. They can be helpful for the DM's voice to come through. Um, but yeah, like for adult games, they for adult games, it's a lot more escapist, I think, right? We can murder the king and the queens because we wish we could do that in real life and know that we can't. And so we'll do it in this game. And I think that for kids, it's different because kids are still so much their characters, identify so much with their characters. Morality comes with a different flavor for them. This is a choice that they are making. It's not Six Tails making this choice. It's Beckett making this choice. And so he internalizes it in a different way. And so the consequences of the choices become a little bit more radical than they do with adult games.
Explain that. How are the consequences more radical?
Because if Six Tails makes a choice in the game and something goes horribly wrong, Beckett is going to internalize that in a way that an adult won't necessarily.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's where teen games are different too, because teens
Yes.
are in that more abstract thinking phase and maybe not quite to the escapist phase yet, although maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it's really fun to play with moral gray areas within reason when it comes to teens, because I think teens love presenting those moral conundrums like, oh, Jean Valjean, he stole a loaf of bread, but it was to feed his sister and her kids, right? Something like that. Like, was that really the bad choice in this situation? Teens love like playing around with that and exploring that and finding those kind of alternative paths or recognizing that it's not just two choices, but there's a whole spectrum of choices within there. I think that's really cool with teens.
It is still really helpful, though, even in a team game like that, to have an interlocutor. We started this whole journey with the kids' table way back in the day with a group of teens, and we didn't have a real interlocutor in the game. Like, we were sort of co-DMing, and then it was these like 6, 8 teenagers around the table who had vastly different views on what would be appropriate in a story and what wouldn't be inappropriate in the story.
And I was gone that day that they made that
That's
other
right.
choice, which I think was part of the problem. Because if I had been there, I could have been another character or another player at the
Yeah.
table.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
want to explain a little bit about what happened?
I mean, like, I think the very short version would just be that they were being sent to rescue this kid, and they were not really taking it very seriously. Or
Yeah.
most of the group wasn't taking it seriously, but one or two of the girls were like very invested in the story, and so there started to be a little bit of drama at the table about
Surprise, middle
right,
school.
middle schoolers, about what was happening. And so that is like another layer to add to this discussion too. When you are doing ethics and morality and gray areas in stories with kids, children or teenagers, you have to know where each person is at the table. because some kids might be in a certain place and some kids might not be to that place yet. Or some kids might have had an encounter in the real world that will skew their perspective in such a way that makes one choice just intolerable for them. And so that's also part of your duty of care as the adult, one of the adults at the table, is to help facilitate those interactions, right? Um, that very first game where, the kids are supposed to, the teenagers are supposed to rescue the kid. I know why one of the girls at least was reacting the way that she was, and it was because she worked with the children
Yeah.
around her. And so she
Yeah.
had a different perspective. Like, this wasn't just an annoying sibling. This was a kid that she had taken care of, like in her head. And the other teenagers just really hadn't encountered children in that way, and so they were a little bit more disposable to them. Um, so you've got to have another voice at the table who can help sort of put the pieces together for them.
Yeah, and sometimes that can even come from another student. If you don't,
Yeah.
if you're playing at a school and it's not really an option to have a parent present at
Yep.
the table or
Yep.
something. Like, I play regularly with a 14-year-old who's very mature, and I like to invite him to the table when I know I'm going to have a little bit more players that are like chaotic and unruly, because I know that he's going to be the peacemaker. He's going to be the one who negotiates and brings everybody together toward the common goal and reminds them of what's important in
Yep.
this moment.
Yep.
Um,
And this is also
um,
where the table rules are really important. The kids' table rules, our very first rule is we treat everybody in the game and around the table with kindness, mercy, and justice. And the in the game part can be really important sometimes to be able to say to a player, okay, I know you're being funny. I know that you're exploring boundaries, but is this treating this NPC with kindness or mercy or justice? No? Okay, rewind a little bit. Let's find a better way to move forward. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can't make quote unquote bad choices, but it helps reframe. If you, the DM, think that the story is starting to get off the rails and that they are starting to trend towards like chaotic evil.
Grand Theft Auto, the
Right,
Grand Theft Auto
exactly. Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
This can help reframe and bring them back to the rules that you set at the very beginning.
Yeah, and I like to pitch it to kids who have never played D&D before. In the very beginning, I'll say, like, this is a shared storytelling
Yep.
game, and we're telling a story about you and your team being heroes and helping the world. Because I want to set off right from the beginning that you guys are the heroes and not the villains.
Yep. 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 And some kids need a special reminder of that, not because they're bad kids. Like, just to say that out loud specifically, when a kid makes a bad choice in the story, that doesn't mean that they are a bad kid. Remember, this is a way of exploration for them. This is a way for them to push boundaries and fail in safe spaces. So I don't be worried if you're presenting moral choices to your kids in game and they make what you consider to be the bad moral choice. That doesn't mean that your kid is a bad person. It does mean that there is more discussion to be had. There is more talk. There's more to explore. Why is this the choice that you wanted to make? There are many valid reasons to make this choice. There are a lot of not valid reasons to make this choice. So let's explore that more in game. Let's explore the consequences. Let's see what happens next. It's a way for kids to explore.
I've seen a lot of people online talking about, like, oh, I played with my kids, you know, between 3 and 6 years old for the first time, and boy, were they bloodthirsty. That
Yes.
really shocked me.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's normal, right? And
Very
and
normal.
I think they do learn almost that video game mode. Like when I pick up Baldur's Gate or Final Fantasy or something, I'm killing creatures left and
Sure.
right. That doesn't mean I want to kill anything in the real
Right.
world.
Right. Right.
It's part of the game,
Right.
right?
Right.
So yeah, it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. And when I run games for kids, I do try to always make it really clear. Either like I lean more into like the monsters and creatures as the bad guys. So it's
Yes.
not like I'm killing a human who was hired by the bad guy to do work, but he's just trying to feed his family.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
not
Yep.
like that, right? They're really bad. Um, or if they are humanoid and they do look like humans, I make it super clear that they're evil and there's no chance of
Right.
reconciliation or bringing them to the light side or anything
Right.
like that.
Right.
Much more than I would with adults. I've seen the adult trend where like you kill an orc and then you find in his pocket a note that says, "Have a great day at work, Daddy," with like
Right.
a children's drawing or
Right.
something. Like I would never do that in a kid's game.
Right.
But I mean, is that interesting in an adult game? Oh, sure.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right.
like really make you think about how quickly you are to pull the trigger.
Right. Yeah. No, you control the buttons that you press. You, especially if you're the DM, you're the one telling the story. So you are the one who gets to introduce the things. If there is a subject that you don't want your kids to be exposed to, don't put it into the game. Like the part of the satanic panic of the of D&D in the 80s was this idea that D&D is all about demons and devils and they're going to catch your kid's soul and nonsense. If you don't want demons to be in your home game, there don't have to be demons in your home game.
Yeah.
That is not intrinsic to D&D. D&D is just a methodology of storytelling. If you want it to be all fluff and light and hamsters, like great. That is the story that you can tell. So definitely think through that when you are planning your story in advance. What are the things that you do want your kids to be exposed to? What are the kids that you don't think, what are the things that you don't think that your kids are exposed to? And go the direction that you want to go. One thing I'll say too is because in the same way that kids will cleave to their character, they become their character and their character becomes them. And so the choices that they make have a bit more of a psychological impact than choices that adult players can make sometimes. The way that you, the adult DM, play evil bad guys also has an impact on the kids. If so, I'm the dad, and I'm Beckett's dad, and I've known Chloe for years, and I've known Dylan for years. And so there's a degree of trust there, there's a degree of understanding there, and I'm still careful about the way that I play bad guys because, especially for the kids in concrete operations at the table, if I lean too hard into the bad guy aesthetic and am not constantly checking in with the kids, that actually does do something to the way that they see me. So I need to be constantly checking in with them and saying, like, I'll go back to season one when the wolf takes Six Tails down in the cave. I'm constantly checking in with Beckett saying, "Are you okay? Don't worry, it's going to be okay. Do you need to take a break?" You need to do that too with bad guy characters. Like, I'm the evil king or evilish king sitting on the throne telling them to do bad things. I need to be breaking character constantly and saying, and like sort of chuckling at his behavior and like telegraphing that this is not how I actually think. And while it may seem like coddling, it is actually an important part of developmentally scaffolding the experience for the kids to show them this is what I, the DM, the adult, apart from the game, think of what is happening. If you look at the really professionalized actual play streams like Dimension 20 or Critical Role, the DMs can get really into the bad guy characters and they can force some really hard consequences on the players at the table. They can do that because they're adults and because they have a shared trust. With kids at the table, you need to be way more careful about who the bad guy is and how you, the DM, are different from the bad guy.
That's a great way to put that. Okay, we will wrap things up today with a fan submitted question from Elucidator115 on TikTok, which says this: how do you get around some of the more gruesome scenes, or do you just not make that an option?
Again, I would say it's based on the kids at your table. Can your kid handle gruesome? That is going to be different for every kid, and it's going to be different at different developmental stages, and it's going to go backwards sometimes. Just because it was okay for your kid last year doesn't necessarily mean it's okay for your kid this year. As kids grow and as their brains continue to develop, they become more aware of consequences and choices and what is actually happening in front of them. So you have to constantly be checking in with them on how they're feeling about that kind of stuff. Some kids are not going to be able to handle in-game death, even if it's a bad guy, even if it's a animal. If they just are not going to be able to handle that. And so the consequences for defeating the bad guy have to be different. Some kids, it's going to depend on the situation. It's going to depend on the motivation. So you just have to be checking in with the kids at your table and knowing where they are. If your kids can handle, a sword through the heart, okay, that's fine. If your kids can't, then the bad guy just goes down. And you don't have to talk about what happens or why it happens. You can just say, "Yeah, you raised your sword up and you beat the bad guy. Good job," right? You can elide over that some of that stuff. And again, it's not coddling. Like this is a story, and the point of it is supposed to be it's supposed to be fun. And when it stops being fun, you stop playing the game. So it can't be about your proclivities. It can't be about what you think would be appropriate. It has to be where the kid is in that moment. And one day that kid will be an adult, and one day you'll be able to play adult style games with that kid. But for now, it's got to be where the kid is.
All about the kid players, huh?
Yep. Okay, Allison, as we're wrapping up this discussion, is there anything that you want to plug? Any places where people can find more wisdom from you on this subject?
Oh, for me, yes. I highly encourage you to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/thekidstablednd. We have 4 awesome membership tiers starting at just $3 a month, and you can gain access to exclusive behind-the-scenes content, first looks, free digital resources, exclusive deep dives and Q&As, and even personalized shout-outs on the show. So I highly encourage you to go on there and join our quest to bring more kids to the table and help us continue doing this for years and years.
If you have more questions about topics like this or other topics that we've talked about, the Patreon is a great place to pledge because those behind the scenes Q&As are very, very helpful if you actually want to know how to bring this to your table.
Thanks for listening to Area of Effect. Check out our original actual play D&D show with kids at the table on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. You can also follow us at The Kids Table D&D on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. Find resources that bring the adventures to your own table at thekidstablednd.com. And be part of the ongoing conversation by DMing us questions that might appear on a future episode at thekidstablednd@gmail.com. And support us by joining our quest at patreon.com/thekidstablednd. Brought to you by The Kids Table, because when kids are at the table, everyone wins!